240DJ WMMJ HD3, WDCJ FM HD3, and worldwide at WOLDCnews.com.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Urban One Incorporated, Radio One, or any of its subsidiary companies.
The following program is paid for by Barbara Arnwine.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Urban One Incorporated, Radio One, or any of its subsidiary companies.
The topics, views, and opinions expressed on the air and via All Igniting Change with Barbara Arnwine, platforms by host Barbara Arnwine Esquire, guests, and supporters are their own and are independent of any organization, entity. Nothing said on the show or any of its platforms constitutes a client-attorney relationship or serves as legal advice counsel. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to Igniting Change, its platforms, or the show's host. It's time now for Igniting Change, a weekly provocative and empowering program where you, the listener, can ignite change. Now here's your host, Barbara Arnwine.
Get up, stand up. Stand up
hello, everybody. Hello, East Coast. Hello, West Coast. Hello to the North and to the South. This is Attorney Daryl Jones. I am the board chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition, as well as the co-host of Igniting Change. Today, Barbara Arnwine is out speaking at an event for the League of Women Voters. I know she's knocking them down, knocking their socks off, talking about voting rights, health, and things that are occurring across our country today. So I know that they're in for some exciting thoughts and some thought-provoking ideas that she's presenting to that League of Women Voters. I can only imagine. She's in Washington, D.C. doing this presentation. She may be able to join us toward the end of the show. We'll see how it goes. But I tell you what, it must be Tuesday. It must be noon Eastern Standard Time because we're talking about igniting change. Folks, let me tell you. Let me start out with this. Today, September the 16th, 2025, is National Voter Registration Day. That's right. National Voter Registration Day is today. This is a great day to do your checkup to be certain that you are registered to vote. You can go to vote.org to check on your voter registration status. In some areas, there may be even elections going on today. In the city of Annapolis, there's an election going on. So be certain if you're in the city of Annapolis, you're getting your vote on. But most importantly, and more importantly, wherever you are in the nation, today is National Voter Registration Day. Please take the opportunity to confirm your voter registration. If you're not registered, get registered. There's so much that's going on across this country, but you got to be registered to ride the train and to move forward as this country moves forward. One of the other issues I wanted to bring up at the top of the show is that, wherever you are in the country, there are D.C. bills. There are bills that affect the Washington, D.C. Territory, if you will, that are up for federal consideration today, this afternoon. One of them, oh my goodness, you're going to hear a guest from Florida, but let me tell you, one of the bills that's up for consideration dealing with the Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, is sponsored by Representative Byron Donalds. Yes, Florida, that Byron Donalds. It's the D.C. Crimes Act, and what it would do is it would lower the age of sentencing discretion for those that are being charged with crimes in the District of Columbia. The other bill that's up for consideration comes from another Republican, Representative Brandon Gill, and his bill is also up for a vote today. What would that do? It would lower the age for minors to be charged as adults from 16 down to 14. Folks, please call 224-3121 and tell them that you are against these D.C. Crimes Act, you're against the D.C. Crimes Act. Please vote against those two bills. Call them and urge them at the top. Before we get into their show, there's one other thing that I've just got to take a moment to do because, it's something that Cameron Barnes, who's one of our TJC fellows and Freedom Riders, brought to our attention. And folks, please just take a moment and let's be certain that we're praying and we're thinking of the family of Trey Reed, Trevion Trey Reed. And Trey Reed, if you don't know the story, please take a moment to Google it because it's unfolding as we're talking. Trey Reed was a student at Delta State University in Cleveland, Mississippi, 21 years old. He's from Mississippi, from Grenada, Mississippi. Well, he this week was found hanging from a tree on the campus this past Monday. And near their pickleball courses where students were passing by and could see what was going on. There are conflicting reports as to how this hanging occurred. But what is known is that Delta State University is over 100 years old and it has a history of violence against blacks. That is known. So we don't know all the facts right now with regards to what happened to Trey Reed. But the one thing we know is we've got to keep that family in prayer. And let's keep the nation in prayer because, we also talked about the death, and we've heard much talk about the death of Charlie Nick and what it means and what it doesn't mean. Well, what I can tell you is this. One thing that it means is that someone lost a life. And the other thing that it means is that we've got to have this honest discussion with regards to what in the world is happening in the United States. When we think about Trey Reed and the possibility of the hanging, all the symbolism that's there, that happened this week, we think about the shooting and the murder of Charlie Kirk. And, the other thing that we've got to take into consideration are these immigration raids that are going on. We're having these immigration raids in California. We're having them in Chicago. We're having them in Washington, D.C. It's now expanding out to Memphis, Tennessee. And this is incredible. And I can tell you that the Department of Homeland Security, they just recently announced what they're calling Operation Midway Blitz, which is where they're going through places in Chicago to try to round up folks that they think might be undocumented and in the United States. We seem to be in a hostile environment in America right now, and it's growing internationally. So that's really one of the concerns that I want to just raise at the top of the show. Folks, today we have a great cast of folks that are going to be with us on this show, a great panel that will be open for just what I think is going to be a wonderful conversation. Our title today is The United States Supreme Court Okays Second-Class U.S. Residents and Citizens. The U.S. Supreme Court, the ultimate authority when it comes to law in our land, they're greenlighting second-class U.S. residents and citizens. Well, folks, what's this all about? All of this unfolds as we, this past Monday, not Monday yesterday, but on September the 8th, the U.S. Supreme Court, at that point they were using what they call the shadow docket, and they were hearing this case that came out of California. And in California, what had been happening was that the Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement officers, which is a federal agency, they were going around and just, gathering up folks that they thought were illegally or undocumented and in the country, and in L.A. in particular. And the federal immigration raids were getting more and more common, and they are across the country. Well, this past Monday, the Supreme Court cleared the way for federal immigration enforcement agents in Los Angeles to use race and other profiling factors to decide who to stop and potentially detain. And, it's not just race that they're using other factors. Now, where the person works. Are you into landscaping? Well, if you're in landscaping, you're probably undocumented. Are you in construction? Well, you're probably undocumented if you're in construction. What neighborhood are you in? They can use that. This is what the Supreme Court has said is okay. You don't have to have a reasonable and articulable suspicion to think the person has committed a crime. Just their appearance, their accent alone would be sufficient to be able to detain and demand that these folks show documented proof of their status to be in the United States of America. This is just a complete violation of the Fourth Amendment, and I can tell you, we have a great group here today to talk about it. We're going to be joined, and all of our guests are with us now. One of our guests, I want to introduce them one by one. The first one is the convener of the Caucus of African American Leaders. He's a civil rights activist. I can only imagine, the smoke that's coming under his collar as he's reading about this case, which is, we call it the Perdermo case, because that's the case that it arose out of in California. He's also an author, the former director of the Office of Maryland Attorney General Civil Rights Program. He's none other than, and he's back here on Igniting Change, Carl Snowden. Carl, welcome to Igniting Change. Welcome back to Igniting Change.
Daryl, thank you for the great introduction, and also thank you for setting the tone. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you so much. We also have with us a person, and she's no stranger to Igniting Change, and I sometimes call her, Igniting Change Part 2, because she's here that much. But I tell you, when you have great guests that are able to bring it and keep it real, you want to keep them around. You want to bring them for the clarity. You want to bring it so that folks know that she is the real deal and she is bringing the truth. She, too, is an author. She's the president and CEO of Concerned Black Men of America. She's a former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. She's a former fundraising director for Church World Services. She's none other than our board member with the Transformative Justice Coalition, Dr. Karen McCrae. Dr. McCrae, welcome back to Igniting Change.
Thank you, Daryl. It's always a pleasure to be here. I look forward to this discussion as well.
And there's no way we could have this discussion without having the Gen Z representative in the place, in the House, being certain that he's bringing it all the time. Because let me tell you, this young guy, he brings it constantly. He doesn't just talk, but he researches it, he lives it, he works it. He's the deputy organizing director for People Power for Florida. He's a graduate student at Florida State University. He's the Florida Democratic Party Campaign Committee Chair. He's also a TJC Fellow and Freedom Rider, and our friend, Andreas Cubillos. Andreas, welcome back to Igniting Change.
Hi, Daryl. Thank you so much for having me on again. It's always a pleasure to be on here.
Well, it's great to have you on. So, Carl, let's go ahead and jump into this thing, man. You heard me laying out what was happening with this Perdermo case in L.A., and that the Supreme Court has, I call it gaslighted, really, the ability of ICE officers to just, say, you look like a day laborer, you're a landscaper, construction, you speak with an accent, we're going to detain you. We want you to prove who you are and that you're here legally. Carl, when you heard that the Supreme Court did this, what was your reaction?
I'm watching history repeat itself for people who are familiar with a program that was run in New York City, in fact, was all across the country, where police officers were stopping in disproportionate numbers African-American, largely men, in New York City, who fit a certain profile. They were black, and that was the reason for them being stopped. And I think, and I had hoped that because of what occurred during those unconstitutional, illegal, and sometimes lethal and fatal stops, that the nation had waken up and saying, this is not the way to go. The Supreme Court, however, as you pointed out, has now made it perfectly legal for police officers to stop people. And here's the real problem, Daryl. Not only can they stop them to ask questions where you work, stop them based on the language they speak, but whatever other prejudice that they may have. If you have a police officer who has a propensity to dislike people of color, you can imagine him using this power in ways that are not good for the individual who gets stopped, and ultimately not good for police-community relations. I suspect this is going to exacerbate police and community relations across the country.
Well, yeah, and I think you've got to be 100% on point with that, because I tell you, one of the things that we have been arguing and pushing for when the Trump administration said that it wanted to send